17-year-old Rudy Farias was reported missing by his mother in 2015, adding to a series of family tragedies. In 2011, Rudy witnessed his brother's death in a car accident, and in 2014, his father took his own life. When Rudy disappeared, it seemed like another misfortune had befallen the family. However, on June 29, 2023, Rudy was found alive. Investigators soon discovered that Rudy had never actually been missing. He had been living at home with his mother the entire time. He had even spoken to police over the years using a fake name. This case has raised many questions. Why did his mother report him missing? What was Rudy doing during those 8 years? Why did he use a false identity? And why did it take so long for the truth to come out? Rudolph Farias, known to everyone as Rudy, was born in Houston, Texas. He lived with his mother, Janie Santana, and his older brother Charles, who was from Janie's previous relationship. Janie had been married to another man for 10 years. Rudy's father, also named Rudolph Farias, was a veteran officer from the Houston police who remained distant, having another family with 5 more children. For Rudy, his older brother was a crucial figure in his upbringing. Rudy once shared on Facebook how important Charles was to him. He recounted how, during his time at school, he was often teased for being small and skinny. But whenever things got tough, Charles would step in to defend and protect him. Charles was more than just a brother. He was Rudy's best friend and father figure. However, Rudy sometimes felt a tinge of jealousy because Charles had a good relationship with his father, who often visited and took Charles out, bringing back cool toys or Happy Meal surprises from McDonald's. According to Rudy, Charles noticed his sadness and one day talked to him, acknowledging Rudy's hurt over not seeing his father. Charles promised he would always be there for Rudy and never abandon him. The brothers grew up inseparable, relying on each other under the strict and unstable supervision of their mother, Janie. To explain Janie's instability, judicial records show she had used at least 5 different surnames over the years, including Diaz, Rodriguez, Farias, and Ortega. The records also indicate that Jenny had been married several times, with at least one marriage annulled because one of her ex-partners claimed she was married to 2 other people simultaneously. She also had a history of minor criminal offenses, such as public disorder on November 22, 1994, inappropriate conduct with a loaded firearm in 1996, and driving without a license with a minor, presumed to be Rudy, in 2020. Additionally, she had been arrested for speeding and driving under the influence. Janie also created social media accounts on platforms like TikTok and Facebook, using photos that were not hers. According to different sources, Janie once stole pictures of a country singer to use on a fake profile. Despite the tumultuous household, there was always pride for the eldest son, Charles. He benefited from his father's financial support but remained humble and down to earth. Charles was an excellent brother, son, and student. He graduated from high school in 2007 and was accepted into the U.S. Marine Corps, with training set to begin on March 21, 2011. At 21, Charles dreamed of serving his country, but his life was tragically cut short in a motorcycle accident on February 13, 2011. Charles's sudden and tragic death profoundly impacted the family. Rudy, who was 13 at the time, expressed his grief on Facebook, detailing the events of that fateful day. He recounted how they woke up together that morning, and Charles asked Rudy to help him get the motorcycle out of the garage. After preparing, Charles left to meet friends, marking the last time Rudy saw his brother alive. A family friend called later that day to inform them that Charles had been in an accident and his body was lying on the pavement. Rudy and Janie rushed to the scene. Rudy recalled that at first he couldn't see his brother. Then he saw his mother on the ground, holding Charles and pleading with God to bring her son back. Rudy described how he froze, staring at his brother lifeless on the ground. This state of shock stayed with him for a long time. He told his loved ones that he found it difficult to even say the word death. He preferred to think that his brother had fallen asleep forever and often said he would soon meet Charles in heaven. At Charles's military funeral, Rudy delivered an emotional speech expressing how much he would miss his brother, who was the closest thing he had to a father. He shared that Charles taught him many things, but not how to live without him. The following years were tough for Janie and Rudy. The void left by Charles was a heavy burden to bear. Rudy began experiencing recurrent episodes of post-traumatic stress and depression. He even started self-harming, scratching his wrists with sharp objects like aluminum cans. On August 19, 2014, 3 years after his brother's death, Rudy received news that his father, aged 51, had also died tragically. The lifeless body of Rudy's father was found in his uniform inside his patrol car. He had parked in a secluded area outside Houston, where he decided to take his own life using his service weapon. The police report on the incident revealed that shortly before, he had been relieved of his duties pending an internal affairs investigation. Rudolph had been with the Houston Police Department since May 1993. A police spokesperson detailed that Rudolph was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation into criminal conduct allegations. The suspension meant he had no police duties and was assigned closely supervised desk work with little to no public contact. It is noteworthy that Rudolph was one of 4 officers under investigation for manipulating speeding tickets issued by the Houston Police Department's Traffic Enforcement Unit. There were instances, for example, of tickets being issued at the same time in different locations hundreds of miles apart. There were also questionable tickets issued late at night. Police sources explained that the motive behind these irregularities was to commit fraud to earn overtime pay. Records show that Rudolph earned $158,000 in overtime since 2012. Although Rudolph was an absent figure, his death affected Rudy, who once again expressed his feelings on Facebook. He thanked those who sent condolences for his father, even though he had never known him. Rudy acknowledged feeling pain because his father's death permanently closed any possibility of a father-son relationship. He confessed that he never expected to feel anything for his father, but in the end, he experienced pain, sadness, lethargy, and other confusing emotions. Amid the emotional turmoil on March 6, 2015, Rudy left his house around 6 p.m. to walk his 2 dogs in northwest Houston. A few hours later, one of the dogs returned home. The second dog came back the next morning, according to a police report. On March 7, 2015, Rudy's mother reported him missing. A missing persons flyer from that year noted that Rudy had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety, and that he might have stopped taking his prescribed medication. The flyer described Rudy as having suffered a leg injury that caused a slight limp. Rudy's cousin told the New York Post that although Rudy was 17, his mental age was around 10. Some of Rudy's family speculated that he might have been kidnapped and sold into a human trafficking ring. 2 years after his disappearance in May 2017, authorities put up a billboard in North Houston to draw attention from local residents in hopes that someone might provide clues to find him. On March 22, 2015, a GoFundMe campaign was launched to help Janie in her search for her son, Rudy. At the time, she claimed Rudy had physical and mental disabilities. The campaign raised $2,025. In 2017, Janie told a news channel that detectives had informed her Rudy might have been kidnapped and sold to human traffickers. However, the case grew more perplexing as sightings of Rudy were reported between 2018 and 2022. In 2018, another of Rudy's cousins called Houston police, saying she had seen Rudy at Janie's house. However, when officers arrived, they found no sign of him. She also mentioned that her grandmother often said she talked to Rudy, but as she was elderly, her claims were not taken seriously. The grandmother insisted that Rudy walked around the house. During a 2020 dispute over the grandmother's guardianship, Janie's sisters accused her of forcing their mother to live in a poorly maintained house. They wanted to move the elderly woman to another home because the current one was so run down that she slept on the couch as there was no bed. Additionally, the sisters alleged that the house was filled with animal urine and feces, causing the grandmother to suffer from skin infections. Despite Janie's denials, the grandmother continued to tell the family she saw and spoke to Rudy. Around the same time, neighbors began reporting seeing a young man resembling Rudy entering and leaving Janie's house. A detective from the Houston Police Department's Missing Persons Unit said that when Janie was questioned about the young man visiting her house, she claimed he was her nephew, not her son. On June 29, 2023, around 10 p.m., a person found Rudy severely injured outside a church in southeast Houston. The young man had bruises all over his body, especially on his face. On July 3, 2023, Janie issued a statement thanking the media and the public for their support over the years. She announced that her son Rudy had been found after being missing for 8 years. Janie mentioned that she had no additional information at that moment but confirmed that Rudy was found unconscious and that the police and 911 were immediately notified. She assured everyone that Rudy was receiving the necessary care to overcome his trauma, but noted that he could not communicate verbally and requested privacy during this difficult time. Adding to the dramatic turn of events, Janie mentioned that Rudy was found clutching the chain his brother Charles used to wear around his neck. She later shared a photo of Rudy in a hospital bed. Rudy's aunts, however, disputed the authenticity of the photo, stating it was taken in 2012. On July 5, 2023, Rudy and his mother met with detectives from the Houston Police Department's Missing Persons Unit at a hotel. They were joined by Quanell X, a prominent activist and advisor for the local Black Panther movement. After the meeting, Quanell X told the media that Rudy had confided in him about experiencing oppressive practices and significant suffering over the past 8 years. He suggested that Janie should be investigated and possibly detained as Rudy, now 25, had endured uncomfortable situations implying a degree of intimacy, but did not label them as sexual in nature. Quanell X informed the press that Rudy had been found outside the church because he had taken his mother's car to escape, but ended up crashing it. He also mentioned that Rudy had been visiting neighbors under an alias. Following the press conference, Quanell X retracted his statements in an interview with The Independent, accusing the police of attempting a cover-up. He recommended providing Rudy with medical and psychological help. A video of Janie in front of her house surfaced on social media, where she expressed that she expected to be arrested. The video was recorded by local residents. On July 6, 2023, the police held their first press conference since Rudy was found. They confirmed that Rudy had returned home the day after being reported missing in 2015 and that his mother had misled the police by continuing to claim he was missing, asserting that the person seen by friends and family around the house was a nephew. The police explained that the district attorney had declined to press charges at that time since being missing is not a crime. That same day, Rudy's aunt reported that she had met with her nephew. She stated that Rudy was traumatized, did not want to be near his mother, and was staying with family friends. She called her sister Janie a pathological liar who had mistreated their mother, who had since passed away. She recalled how their late mother always insisted that Rudy was living in the house, only to be dismissed as lying by Janie. Learning that Rudy had been alive and controlled by his mother for 8 years, his cousin told a reporter that she felt more concern than relief. She found it disturbing that Janie had lied and hidden her adult son for 8 years for reasons that remained unclear. As more details of the case emerged, reporters found Janie's address and started arriving in her neighborhood. Janie became nervous and began offering money to residents, asking them to stay silent and not reveal that they had seen a young man entering and leaving the house when detectives and journalists arrived. Disturbed neighbors pointed out that the young man they now identify as Rudy had always been known to them as Dolph, Janie's nephew. Amid the media frenzy and the community's astonishment at the bizarre case, Janie's whereabouts remain unknown as she appears to have left her family home. A news media confirmed that activists and neighbors gathered on July 7th in front of Rudy's house in East Houston, demanding a thorough investigation by the district attorney and criminal charges against Rudy's mother. On July 13th, Rudy made his first public statements after spending 8 years hidden away due to his mother's actions, attracting worldwide attention. He explained how he stayed out of sight for so long out of obedience. Rudy agreed to the on-camera interview, but asked to have his face concealed because he felt overwhelmed by the attention his case had generated. He accused his mother, Janie, of brainwashing him, clarifying that he was never physically locked up or tied down. He could come and go as he pleased, but chose not to because she convinced him the world was a hostile place, and they could only survive by staying together at home. The police added that although Rudy was listed as a missing person, he and his mother interacted with officers using false names and birthdays to hide their identities. During the interview, Rudy described feeling trapped in his own home for years, likening it to living in a prison. He recounted how Janie would lock him in a room whenever family members visited. He could hear them chatting and laughing but could not join in. Rudy shared that he eventually began to yearn for freedom, to have a job, live a life, love someone, and be loved. He fought to understand his emotions. Janie manipulated him into believing he had to stay silent for his own good, bombarding him with negative thoughts that made him complicit in the charade. It was a form of mental imprisonment, Rudy explained, as he could work with his mother as a security guard and roam the neighborhood, but always under her watchful eye. Following his reappearance and contact with people who clarified the situation, Rudy said his relationship with his mother felt like Stockholm Syndrome. This psychological coping mechanism involves victims developing positive feelings towards their captor to survive. Rudy expressed that his mother had psychologically imprisoned him and wielded significant power over him as his sole parental figure since childhood, alongside his late brother. Despite answering all the reporters' questions about his false disappearance, some of Rudy's explanations still leave gaps. For instance, when asked if he ever questioned Janie about why they kept pretending he was missing, he said he did not remember. Regarding the allegations by activist Quinnell X about inappropriate advances by his mother, Rudy stated that the media had twisted his words. He mentioned occasionally sleeping with his mother but did not recall why, asserting it was not intimate, though he felt uncomfortable with it. Reporters also asked if his mother had ever drugged him. Rudy recalled an incident when he was about 12 years old and she gave him a bottle of Tylenol PM or sleeping pills. According to Rudy, his mother forced him to go to the hospital, making him pretend he was sick from an overdose. He couldn't remember why she did this, but suggested it might have been because she had something to do at school. He added that around the time of his supposed disappearance, he didn't know how to handle his emotions, especially since it happened right after his brother, Charles, passed away. When asked if his mother wanted him to take on a husband-like role at home, he said yes, but only in terms of shared responsibilities, like cooking and cleaning, with nothing romantic or intimate involved. Rudy told the reporters that he finally decided to leave home because he wanted to end the life he was living, where his mother kept him hidden, manipulated him, and made him believe the outside world was dangerous. When asked what message he would send to his mother if she saw the interview, Rudy replied that he wanted her to leave him alone and let him live his life and be happy. Throughout the interview, Rudy's tone was marked by anxiety and distress. In response to Rudy's shocking and unexpected revelations, his Aunt Pauline spoke to the media, expressing her deep concern for her nephew and noting that Rudy was still scared. Janie's whereabouts remain unknown, but it's possible she will face legal action from GoFundMe for benefiting from the false disappearance story. The fundraising platform stated that she had been permanently banned from GoFundMe and future beneficiary opportunities after the scam came to light. GoFundMe has a zero-tolerance policy for misuse of the platform and cooperates with police investigations into alleged misconduct. The GoFundMe campaign claimed Janie was a single mother who lost her eldest son in 2011 and Rudy's father in 2014. She needed financial help as she couldn't work due to dedicating herself to searching for her missing son. Consequently, bills were piling up, and her health had deteriorated mentally, physically, and emotionally. Brenda Paradise, a private investigator who worked on the case, believes resources were misused in the search for Rudy. Brenda is part of the non-profit organization We Help the Missing. She mentioned that volunteers searched wooded areas and made exhaustive efforts to find Rudy. She shared some of her audio notes from 2015, where Janie accused a gang of Mexicans of kidnapping her son, but this alleged group never contacted her. Brenda has not ruled out filing a lawsuit for the expenses incurred by the association during Rudy's 8-year disappearance. Rudy's case highlights the vulnerability of minors under negligent or abusive parents. In 2018, approximately 9.2 out of every 1,000 children in the United States were subjected to some form of maltreatment, according to the Children's Bureau. Neglect is the most common form of maltreatment, present in 60% of cases, as reported by the same bureau. Neglect occurs when a parent or guardian fails to meet a child's basic needs, whether medical, educational, physical, or emotional. The combination of oppression and deprivation of liberty seen in Rudy's case is common in situations involving Stockholm Syndrome within controlling relationships. One way these feelings and thoughts develop is through cognitive dissonance, which explains how and why people change their ideas and opinions to endure situations that don't seem healthy, positive, or normal. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. As you know, Here at Unreal True Crime, we release videos every other day. Many of you have reached out expressing a desire for daily content, so we've launched a new channel also focused on real-life crime stories called The Crime Storyteller. On the days we don't post videos on Unreal True Crime, we'll upload them there. This means if you're looking for daily doses of the most astonishing real-life crime cases, don't hesitate to subscribe. Without further ado, let's dive into today's case. Ayla Reynolds was born on April 4, 2010 in Waterville, a city in the state of Maine, United States. She was a beautiful girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and an irresistible smile. She loved music and dancing to the rhythm of her favorite songs. Her parents, Trista Reynolds and Justin DiPietro, were not a couple but had known each other for a long time. They had a brief romance in the summer of 2009, resulting in Trista getting pregnant. The news was particularly surprising for Justin, who had no intention of having a child with Trista and even doubted he was the father. When Trista gave birth to Ayla, the resemblance to Justin was undeniable, but he still refused to acknowledge her as his daughter. A paternity test in July 2010 finally made him accept his parenthood. Consequently, in December of the same year, he was ordered by Child Protective Services to provide child support. Trista and Justin didn't have a court-approved custody agreement. However, Trista, who lived in Portland, had the primary physical custody of Ayla thanks to an arrangement between them. It was only in mid-2011, after Ayla's first birthday, that Justin started having visits with her. He lived an hour and a half away, and the encounters were meant to be during the day and very brief. They agreed that he could occasionally take Ayla with him, but never overnight. In the months following Ayla's birth, Trista became pregnant again, this time by her fiancé Raymond. Thus, in 2011, Ayla became the elder sister to Raymond Jr., and Trista managed the care of both children. Everything changed on October 13, 2011, when Trista had an encounter with Child Protective Services. The details of the complaint that led to this meeting are not clear, but it was known that Trista had a substance abuse problem. That day, officials gave her an ultimatum: overcome her addiction or lose her children. Immediately, Trista entered a 10-day rehabilitation program and left her children in the care of her mother and sister. Ayla and Raymond were her world, and she was determined not to lose them. By October 2011, Justin had seen Ayla approximately 5 to 10 times. However, just 4 days after Trista's internment on October 17th, Justin and his family decided they wanted custody of Ayla. Justin's mother, Phoebe DiPietro, contacted Child Protective Services and received approval to take Ayla. The official call to inform Trista's relatives about the agency's decision came swiftly. When Ayla's aunt heard that they had to hand over Ayla, she criticized the decision, claiming that Justin was abusive and had harmed the child in the past. The officials argued that a father has more rights to custody than an aunt. Once permission was granted, Justin and his family went to pick up Ayla, but they did not know the address. The child protection officials provided the location through the police. Officer Charles Weaver accompanied Justin and his mother to Jessica's house, Ayla's aunt. The paternal grandmother waited in the car while Justin and the police officer went to the door, leading to a dramatic scene. Jessica implored the officer not to take the child away and warned that she wouldn't give up Ayla willingly. The officer noted that Ayla was in good spirits. She was incessantly laughing, playing, and even trying to initiate conversation. To demonstrate her point, Jessica, Trista's sister, told the officer to observe how Ayla's behavior changed when Justin appeared. At that moment, he had just approached, and seeing him, Ayla immediately started to cry and tried to distance herself. Despite this, the officer took the child and handed her to her father. Ayla was struggling and screaming and even attempted to bite the officer when she was placed in Justin's arms. Ayla's aunt told Officer Charles that Ayla was terrified of her father and that they couldn't take the child away. Charles explained that if it were his decision, he wouldn't let Ayla go with Justin, but it wasn't up to him. He was there to enforce the directive from Child Services. It's crucial to clarify that if Justin had wanted primary physical custody of Ayla, he would have had to reach an agreement with the child's mother or otherwise undergo a judicial process to obtain a judge's approval. As we saw in the custody exchange we just recounted, there was neither an agreement nor a court involved. What was applied was the judgment of a Child Protective Services supervisor. What the official did not consider were the arrangements made by the mother herself, who had full custody for the child to remain in the care of her relatives during her temporary absence. On the other hand, before a court grants a parent exclusive physical custody of a child, usually the conditions are thoroughly evaluated, including a background check and a home visit, which did not occur in Ayla's case. In essence, in custody procedures, the child's best interest must prevail, but reportedly, no report was found to support the adopted decision. In analyses published about Ayla's case, it was believed that only the presence of imminent danger threatening the child's safety could outweigh the stability and continuity provided by staying with her maternal relatives. In this sense, it could be thought that Child Protective Services officials believed the child was at risk. If that had been the case, it is not justified that the measure was applied only to Ayla and not to her little brother Raymond. The father took the girl to his childhood home in Waterville, where he lived with his 47-year-old mother, Phoebe, his 24-year-old sister, Elisha, and her daughter, Gabriella, who, like Ayla, was a baby. At that time, Justin, 25, occupied the partially finished basement, a single large room, while the rest of the family lived upstairs. During the time spent in rehabilitation, Trista called Justin every day to speak with Ayla and ensure everything was all right. In these contexts, she perceived no warning signs. On October 20th, 2011, coinciding with the 8th day of Trista's treatment, there was a meeting to discuss Ayla's case attended by Child Protective Services members, 2 doctors, Trista and her sister Jessica, who were accompanied by a lawyer, and Justin, who participated by phone. This encounter resulted in an agreement. Ayla would be returned to her mother on October 22, 2011, as soon as Trista completed the addiction recovering program. It was also agreed that Justin would bring Ayla to the treatment center on the 21st for a visit. Everything was going well for Trista, but the situation would soon change. None of the established agreements were fulfilled. Desperate to regain her daughter, Trista repeatedly called Child Protective Services for help to enforce the agreement made in their presence. Since she could not get anywhere with Child Protective Services, she sought a temporary agreement with Justin. He would continue to keep the child, and she would have regular visits. On November 12, 2011, Justin took the girl to an emergency room. After conducting the pertinent studies, the doctors determined that the little girl had a broken bone in one of her joints. Specifically, the broken bone was in the joint that connects the elbow to the upper arm. Justin told the doctor that the accident had occurred the previous night on November 11th. According to his account, it was raining, and he slipped and fell on her while on the porch with Ayla in his arms. He added that, although she had cried, she didn't seem to be injured, and it wasn't evident until the next morning that she required urgent medical attention. By the following Monday, The orthopedist considered that surgery wouldn't be necessary and that the injury would likely heal on its own. A week later, on November 26th, during her third medical appointment to assess the child's progress, the specialist said things were going as planned. Trista was present at that medical consultation to closely follow her daughter's recovery, never thinking that this would be the last time she would hold her in her arms. From that moment, things spiraled. Tired of arguing over the custody of her daughter, over visitations, and even over her right to talk to the child on the phone, the mother decided to take a step forward. On December 15, 2011, she filed papers in court to initiate legal proceedings to obtain full physical custody of Ayla. Just 2 days later, on Saturday, December 17th, Justin called the police in the morning to report Ayla's disappearance from his mother's house, where he was staying with his girlfriend, Courtney Roberts, and his sister, Elisha. He assured them that they had put the 20-month-old girl to bed the night before, and when they woke up, she was gone. Early that morning, Trista had started a car trip to a coastal city in Maine, just 50 miles from the Canadian border, to visit her boyfriend Raymond, who had just entered a correctional facility after being convicted of arson. She was dozing in the passenger seat while her father-in-law, Robert Fortier, drove. Robert answered a call from Trista's father, informing him that Ayla was missing. The news left him frozen, and he looked for a suitable place to stop the vehicle and wake Trista. Still drowsy, she heard her father's voice and managed to understand that her baby's whereabouts were unknown. Desperate, Trista changed her course to meet the police who were searching for her little daughter. The journey lasted an hour and a half, but for Trista, it seemed like an eternity. Throughout the trip, she frantically called Justin to find out what had happened, terrified at the lack of response. Even upon arriving at the police station, both Trista and her fiancé's father gave statements. About 30 minutes later, Trista's father joined them at the police headquarters, angry and very distressed. As it transpired, Justin had called 911 that morning at 8:49 to report the disappearance. He said the last time someone saw Ayla was the previous night around 10 p.m., when his sister Elisha checked on her before going to bed. On Saturday morning, they discovered she had disappeared from her crib, but he didn't specify the time in the call. Justin's theory was that the minor had been kidnapped by an unknown intruder. The news of the minor's disappearance spread like wildfire, and the authorities wasted no time initiating an operation. Police chief spoke to the media, stating that the case was being aggressively investigated and that their goal was to find Ayla at all costs. The police proceeded to search the house for any clues that could lead them to the minor. To facilitate operations, the family stayed with friends. At the same time, a command center was established to coordinate the search operation. On the second day, Sunday, December 18th, search dogs were deployed, and the area around the house where Ayla was last seen was searched. Trista's home also underwent a meticulous search, during which the distressed woman had to stay with her mother and younger son in a motel. Trista's father found it exceedingly difficult to sit idle, as Ayla was the apple of his eye. On the third day, Monday, December 19th, the FBI was requested to assist in the search. By this time, 75 individuals from various agencies were involved in the operation. The Maine State Police seized 2 vehicles from the DiPietro residence. One, a 1996 Ford Explorer, belonged to Justin. The other, a 4-door silver sedan, was owned by Justin's girlfriend Courtney, who was also present on the night of the disappearance. From day one, local newspapers echoed the news the following morning. Headlines in print media were already covering the story, and 72 hours later, Trista could be seen in interviews with different local news outlets. She did not hesitate to point towards Justin. By the end of the first week, the Today Show, one of the most successful morning news programs in the United States, highlighted the news. There, Trista insisted that her daughter's father was the only one who could answer her questions, as he was the last to see her alive. On the evening of the fourth day, Justin made his first statement to the media. He appeared calm, as if the disappearance hadn't occurred while the child was under his care. He claimed to have no idea what happened to Ayla and stated he wouldn't make accusations or insinuations until the police determined who was responsible for the disappearance. He also announced that he and his family would do everything possible to aid the investigation and secure his daughter's return. During his statement, Justin acknowledged that Ayla was under his exclusive custody at the time of her disappearance, but he lied, stating that this was achieved through an agreement with the mother. Moreover, he added that Trista was incapable of taking care of the child. As days passed, the search efforts widened. The FBI's child abduction rapid deployment team canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on every door. They repeatedly interviewed neighbors, hoping to uncover some revealing details. The police emphasized the significant effort underway, seeing only commitment and energy from the 75 officers dedicated to resolving the case. Until the 10th day after Justin's complaint, it was estimated that 5,000 hours of work had been invested in the search, and 330 leads were being followed. The operation also involved around 50 civilian volunteers from the Search and Rescue Association. A reward of $30,000 was offered to anyone who could provide a lead that would help in recovering Ayla. Trista remained steadfast in her efforts to find her beloved daughter. The grieving mother was determined in her fight to keep everyone focused on the case. She worked with allies and support groups to organize vigils, marches, and events in memory of Ayla. News cameras were always present, and she, along with other spokespeople, offered new topics to journalists to keep the story on the front page and in the nation's mind. Gradually, the initially optimistic and hopeful message from the authorities started changing. The chief of police continued to insist that the investigation was being considered a missing person case and not a homicide. However, the mood definitively shifted when Justin's house and the surrounding area were cordoned off. The cars were confiscated, and the head of the main criminal prosecution made a public appearance. The police publicly ruled out the possibility of Ayla having walked away on her own, and on the 13th day, the police chief handed over the reins of the case to the State Police Serious Crime Unit. At that moment, an announcement nobody wanted to hear was made. The case ceased being the search for a missing girl and started being considered a criminal investigation. During the initial days, Justin tried to stay as far away from the media as possible, but gradually his presence began to become more frequent. In one of his appearances on the Today Show, he spoke about the change in the message from the law enforcement agencies, insisted that someone had kidnapped Ayla, and expressed his wish for whoever took her to return her home. He also asserted that he had come on the program hoping to reach whoever had his daughter to let them know that what they were doing was wrong. As if he knew the person in question, he spoke directly to them, saying they might think what they were doing was right for Ayla, but it wasn't. He clarified that this person had no right because they weren't her father, and that the child needed to be at home with her family. When questioned about the silence he had maintained until that point, Justin acknowledged that his efforts to cooperate had been delayed. He justified himself by stating that he had been a bit naive during the first weeks, thinking that Ayla would return. He also claimed that the law enforcement agencies had advised him to stay away from the press. This was partially confirmed by the spokesperson for the Maine Department of Public Safety, who explained that this was only said to him at the beginning. Later, the police themselves encouraged Ayla's parents to remain in the public eye. Justin took the opportunity to respond directly to the insinuations that had been made about him. He asked the television host to come see him and spend a day with him to witness what he was going through. Finally, he said that he praised the police's efforts, although some of the techniques and tactics they had to use had not been enjoyable. He pointed out that the truth is the truth. No matter how many times you are asked the same question and shouted at that you are a liar, anticipating that the truth is patient and would come to light. By the end of January, the police revealed that Ayla's blood had been found in various places in the DiPietro house. It also emerged that, while there was not enough evidence to make any arrests, Justin, Courtney, and Elisha, the three adults living in the residence where the girl was last seen, were considered suspects. Stephen McCausland, the spokesperson for the Maine Department of Public Safety, said that the family's version of events was not supported by any forensic evidence, thereby ruling out the possibility that someone could have entered the bedroom where Ayla slept alone and taken her without any of the three adults in the house noticing. 6 months after Ayla's disappearance was reported, on May 30th, 2012, the police said that it was unlikely that the little girl was alive. Trista's family allowed journalists into their home as they watched the press conference where this news was announced. Trista immediately broke into tears. Then her sorrow turned to rage, and she asserted that Justin had killed her baby. For Trista's family, learning in detail the results of some forensic tests conducted at Justin's family's house was very hard. They knew Ayla's blood was found and had even been told that the amount found was equivalent to 25% of the blood volume of her body. However, they had never been in front of the evidence until January 2013, when everything discovered was revealed to them. To begin with, Justin's 1996 Ford Explorer had a baby seat in the back, and Ayla's blood was found on the left shoulder strap. There was also dried gastric fluid on the back seats. In the girl's bedroom, blood was found on some of her princess, pink sneakers on the floor next to her crib, as well as on the face and arms of her doll. The investigators thought that she might have tried to clean the blood from her mouth with her toy. Additionally, a blood stain was located on the living room sofa. However, most of the blood traces were in the basement. A pool of Ayla's blood stained the center of the mattress on which Justin slept with Courtney. Moreover, vomit and an unidentified pink fiber resembling hair that could be from a toy were found on the bed. Next to the same piece of furniture were Justin's sneakers stained with Ayla's blood on the tongue and inside. Additionally, there were splashes on the cement floor around the bed and on the walls. The latter matched Ayla's height. An expert determined that some drops were the size of a dime, indicative of trauma from a blunt object. Additionally, the experts determined that some blood spatter patterns in the house might have been expelled by Ayla through coughing, indicating that her injuries were both internal and external. The police stated that bed linens had been used to clean the girl's blood. It was horrific for Trista and her family to learn these details, and they hadn't seen everything yet. The same officers exposing the gruesome evidence warned them that they were about to witness something even more horrifying. Luminol tests were conducted in the house, revealing blood traces invisible to the naked eye. The slides taken at the house devastated Trista. After seeing them, she left the police station in a panic. She was more convinced than ever that her daughter, Ayla, had been murdered. The police said there were more images to show her, but she refused to see them. She'd had enough. Reportedly, when the police showed Justin and the DiPietro family the same photographic evidence months before, he showed no reaction. The police also tried to show the photos to the family with whom the DiPietro stayed during their exile from their house while it was being processed by crime scene investigators. They refused. They were not interested. Justin's girlfriend, Courtney, who was with Justin on the night of the disappearance, had the same reaction. After confronting the compelling police findings, Trista told the press amid her unbearable pain and helplessness that Justin, Elisha, and Courtney were still walking the streets as if nothing had happened. 8 months after receiving the dramatic report in September 2013, Trista wrote an explosive letter to the press about the evidence and the photos she had been shown. She was tired of waiting and, with or without law enforcement's blessing, she wanted to rekindle public interest in the case. In spring 2016, a team of journalists went to Justin's mother's house. Elisha, Ayla's aunt, answered the door, and the journalist asked about the blood evidence. She explained that Ayla was lactose intolerant and had been vomiting. However, a quick internet search showed that common symptoms of lactose intolerance are gas, bloating, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. While nausea and vomiting are listed, they are not the most common symptoms, let alone vomiting blood. In 2017, at Trista's request, a judge finally declared Ayla legally dead. The magistrate ruled that the death occurred around December 17, 2011, when she was reported missing by her father, Justin. With that resolution in hand, Trista and her lawyers filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Justin, alleging he caused Ayla's death through intentional unlawful acts and subjected the girl to pain prior to death, fear, terror, and physical injuries. At the time the lawsuit was filed, the subject was missing, and it was later learned that he and his lawyers denied any wrongdoing and labeled the lawsuit baseless. Faced with this, Trista decided to hold a press conference in which she addressed her dead daughter's father directly, asking him if he had any conscience.
I can see it in your eyes. And you know that's the problem. You look at me and you're gonna... I know you care.
Just say something, man.
Please, Justin.
Earlier this year, 2023, a judge approved Trista's petition to include Phoebe and Elisha in the wrongful death lawsuit. The three defendants are facing civil charges for wrongful death, conscious pain and suffering, and unlawful interference with the body of a deceased person. Additionally, Justin faces a charge for breaching a parent's duty to care for a minor child. Both Trista and her lawyer knew that they would not receive any financial compensation from Justin. That wasn't the goal of the lawsuit. Their objective was to reveal information and uncover the truth. There were so many strange things about Ayla's disappearance. For example, investigators told Trista something astonishing about the morning Ayla disappeared. Before calling 911, Justin drove to Portland and back. He claimed he thought Trista had taken Ayla and was looking for her, but he never called her or any of her family members. However, during that long trip, he did call his friend, who had sold him a $25,000 life insurance policy for Ayla a few weeks before. The weird thing is that Justin stayed at this friend's house while detectives advanced the investigations after the disappearance. This action was astonishing, considering that Justin stayed out of his baby's life during the 9 months of pregnancy and most of the child's existence. Trista also revealed having received strange messages from Justin in the week following the day he took Ayla. He mentioned being afraid that someone would try to kidnap her or snatch her away. The last time he said something similar was around December 11th, 6 days before the disappearance was reported. But when the child disappeared, those same messages became threatening and confusing. Trista said she had always wondered what those words meant. And well, that concludes today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, give a like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. See you soon. This is Unreal True Crime.